All right, I believe that we are live. Looks like everything's going pretty good. I'd like to welcome you guys to this week's Comic Shop live stream with me, Aaron Z. Lee, aka Pens and Pedals. You can find my stuff at pensandpedals.com or at Pens and Pedals on Instagram. I'm the creator of Preet's Pizza, Son of a Pizza Man. Oh boy. My audio is feeding back to me. Yeah, so I'm the creator of the Preet's Pizza, Son of a Pizza Man 3-part comic book collected. You can find it at the Oswego Comic Shop. And I'm also working on a new series. I have 3 issues out of it. It's Wesley the Robot, the soundboard equipment and emergency alert system come to life at a college radio station at an indie rock radio station show. And hijinks ensue. I've been working hard on all the issues that come up. Oh, hey, Abby. Oh, thanks, Abby. It's always nice to hear some compliments. I'm glad that you found that and thought it was good. Thank you. That's a really big compliment. So, yep, I'm Aaron Z. Lee. I did Preet's Pizza, Wesley the Robot. I've been working hard on issue 4, 5, and 6, and a whole bunch of other stuff for the Wesley the Robot character, because I have some time over the summer. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at some of these group shots of the Wesley the Robot character and the supporting cast, and working on inking those. So, I think I want to work on this one first. This one has a little bit more visual interest for me. I think I'm going to use there's this Pilot Parallel Brush Pen. What's nice about this, I think it's supposed to be a calligraphy brush. Because it's got that square tip. But you can use it to do some regular inking. I'm just going to write back quick. What's funny is I still have all the art club alerts on my phone and stuff like that. So every time I do one of these live streams, I get an alert for art club too. So it's kind of like there's a virtual art club still happening. But the nice thing about this parallel brush pen is you can get very thin lines. So I'm going to use those to kind of figure out how I want to ink this. I've already taken a picture of this digitally too, so if I mess this up, I can just print out a new one and ink it. Because everything is a process. If there's any mistakes, there's always ways to fix it. It's all just production art. Something that I've even done in the pencils of this drawing here is I made a pretty thick line around this character, Mike on the mic. And that's one of the ways that you can make a character look closer to the viewer. And since he is the closest one to the camera, or the viewpoint of the reader, he's going to have that wider line around him. Abby's saying some really nice stuff. I missed that study hall too, though. I used to have open art. Well, hopefully I'll have it again when school starts in the fall. But at study hall time, kids would get an option to come down to the art room and work on art projects. Just kind of hang out. It was a really good vibe. It was a really good room. So I missed that too, Abby. Hopefully we can have open art again in the fall. I hope that works out. With all this craziness going on in the world here. And Evan's here. Thanks, Abby. You're being very nice. Yeah, I work really hard at art. I'm always working on stuff. Just make sure I answer in text as well. Maybe for people who didn't see this last week, since last week the comic shop released The Walking Dead Negan Lives special for, it was entirely for profit of comic shops, so I did some zombie artwork. There's some painting. It's a mixture of colored pencil, gouache, watercolor, and I think that's it. It's almost finished, or it may be finished. I haven't decided yet. And a while ago, I think I was waiting for that to dry or something. I can't remember which stream that it was on, but I had 20 minutes to kill, so I just drew this Wolverine because he's a character I really liked when I was growing up. It's a character I drew so much I could draw him blindfolded probably. A nice thing about this parallel brush pen is because it does have that square tip, you can cover in large areas pretty easily. One drawback to these pens, though, is they do have cartridges inside, so you do have to get more cartridges or figure out a way to refill the cartridges, which I haven't figured out yet. I just haven't taken the time. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I just bought some refills instead, because I have other brushes and stuff I can move to if I want to. I still have to test out. I got this pen called an Indigraph, which is an India ink based fountain pen, which you can just put more ink back into. Because typically I think fountain pens do not use India ink. I just haven't squared it away. I've been doing a lot of drawing. This pen that I have right here, Evan, this is a Pilot Parallel brush pen, but basically what it is it just has a square tip, but it's like a really well-functioning calligraphy pen, because sometimes those calligraphy pens get jammed and they don't work great. If these things have ink in them, they typically work pretty good. I'm kind of glad I dove right into drawing this group scene, because I was thinking about even lightboxing these over into a comic book page, which, I mean, I suppose I still could do. But sometimes I get too much into my head about the working process. And sometimes it's better just to dive in and not think about it too much. Like, I've been doing a lot of drawing this week. Like, a lot of drawing. Probably did 20 drawings this week. Yeah, this is a pretty good result in Pilot Brush Pen. It's that combination of that very thin, precise line, and then the other side is kind of like a chisel. So it kind of has like the energy of a Sharpie marker. I just bought a ton of giant Sharpie markers. Well, not a ton, but I think I ordered 12 of the largest size Sharpie marker you can get. Just so that when I have to fill in those large areas of black, I can do it like super fast. Although I have a ton of ink too, but the Sharpie marker is probably a little bit less messy, although it can get quite messy. It's so nice to have a decent drawing already in pencil before you start to ink, because then you can kind of do stuff without really thinking, and then you look back at it and it looks okay. Yeah, it's looking pretty decent. There's some proportion issues going on with some of the heads of the characters in this, but that's stuff that I can fix digitally, I think. I've been trying to jump ahead and work on the last issue of the current arc of Wesley the Robot, so that way, when I get towards the end of this current arc, the current storyline, I'll have a good story already built up, so it'll just be like polishing the finished part instead of being out of gas from making all the other pieces. So I'm pretty excited about that. I have enough put together that I could start to put together the pencils of some pages, which is always exciting when you can start popping in panels. The way I work with my comic book panels, sometimes I do everything all in one big comic book page, like with this kind of paper. I mean, you don't need this kind of paper to do comic book pages, but it's nice because it already has the blue lines and everything already figured out for you, so it's really easy to mark up and set up the panels how you want. Other times, this is the way I work most of the time, I think, just because it allows me to focus just on one panel at a time and do one good drawing and then move on to another good drawing. I'll do each panel or scene on a separate sheet of paper and really try and get that looking as good as it possibly can. And then I'll scan that in, and then I have a program on the computer called InDesign, which you can make a box and then put an image inside that box. And so a lot of the time, the way I set up my pages is I create my layout with all my boxes on it, and then populate that layout with these drawings, which lets me kind of move things around or flip things or kind of edit the story as I'm going along. It gives me a little bit more freedom than if I had done everything on the page, because it's kind of fixed at that point. Although, I mean, I can always edit it digitally or make any number of changes to it. But in terms of assembling the story to work better, I like the InDesign working method now, because the way I write these too is I have an idea of what the story is, but as I'm working, I usually come up with like better ideas or way to expand the story in certain ways. So even if I wrote out a script, it would be changing all the time. So I typically will start with like the big scenes in the story, and then fill it in backwards with the other pieces, like the other connective tissue of the story. So it makes sense. It's just not one of those big scenes. Yeah, it looks pretty good on screen. And inside the comic, I like to have a mixture of digital and traditional inks. I think the digital inks definitely look slicker, but there's so much more character in the traditional inks. The benefit of the digital is I have an iPad, so I can pretty much like just take a picture of a panel and then ink it right in Clip Studio anywhere. Like if I'm waiting someplace, I can get my iPad out and just work on that. And there's ways to make the digital look rougher too, but I'm just drawn more to the precision at this point. Although a lot of my art heroes they have realism, but they do rougher lines. They're not afraid to have the texture show through. Let's see. And I broke one of my rules there. Whenever you ink, you're supposed to start left to right. But I kind of did that because I like this figure the most in this drawing. So now I've got to let that dry. But luckily I've got another scene underneath here. And I'm going to give the parallel brush pen a break for a minute here. I'm going to use one of my Deleter Hunt 102 nibs. I don't think it's actually Hunt 102 nib, but because Deleter made it, but that's like the equivalent of one of your nibs that might go in the small brown speedball holder that you might be able to find in local craft stores. But I like the Deleter brand a lot. I like their paper and all their products. They haven't let me down at all yet. Yeah, so we're going to use that on this other one. I've been trying out a bunch of their stuff, like this black number 4 ink. It's got a cat on it. I wonder if the white ink has a cat on it too. It does, of course. Right. And the nice thing about working with a pen like this is you can get a nice tapered line. This is really what I use Clip Studio and all those programs for, is to emulate what this kind of pen can do, because it can go from thick to thin really well. There's also another brush I use called a dagger brush that I might be able to get out in a moment. It's called a dagger brush because the shape of the bristles on the brush are like a dagger. But that's another tool that lets you do thick and thin lines very quickly. There's 3 little surprise dashes up here. There are things that would be called emanata in the language of comics, because they're emanating from a character and they describe some kind of an emotion. The creator, I can't remember the name of the creator, but his comic strip was Gasoline Alley, and I think he is the one who originated that phrase, or like an exclamation point or a question mark above the head of a character, emanata. Although it may have been done before he coined a phrase for it. Had a lot of options on different stuff to work on this week. Just hitting a very productive week in the art world this week. Just like anything else, like sometimes you only do a couple drawings and they come out okay, but there's other stuff you're working on. But this week was just a good week for drawing. It's not over yet, we're only halfway through. A little over halfway. I'll probably be working on some more drawing. Finishing up issue number 4 of Wesley the Robot. Well, the art at least. And I'll go through and do all the speech bubbles and all the other little fine-tuning. But that is well underway, along with issues 5 and 6. And I've been working on these panels for the last issue. So I think they will all be on time. I tried to be nice to myself and give myself deadlines of 2 issues a year, because then I can definitely dig back through and enhance each issue, make sure that they look good. Because I got other work to do too. I like how I broke my rule again. I'm supposed to start on the far left, but I started right in the middle. I think I always break that rule because I always go to my favorite part of the drawing. In this case, it's Wesley. Oh, thanks, Evan. I think they'll make sense more in the story. I was actually working on a drawing for part of the introduction to the last issue, because all of it happens during an event in Alfred, New York called Hot Dog Day. So I was drawing a hot dog truck. I'm drawing some crowd scenes. Hello, James Norse. Nice to see you again. Hello, Joe. I still need to get some of those videos from YouTube and speed them up, put some music behind them. Make like a digest version of all these streams. I'm way too much in the mood to draw and ink stuff. To edit video though. I don't know, that's a creative person thing or like an every person thing. When you're in the mood to do a certain thing that you have to get done anyways, like you forego the more important stuff and do the stuff that you're motivated to do first and then do that stuff later. I don't know, sometimes I'm like that. Like I've been organizing all the files on my computer a little bit, but only a little bit at a time because I'd much rather be drawing or going outside or swimming. Oh, Joe's gonna send me some videos. Yeah. I'll be done around 4, right? How's it looking on screen? It looks better on screen, of course. See, after I use up the ink on this brush, I might switch over to a brush pen. I'm working on this Strathmore marker paper because it's like Bristol board, but it's a little bit thinner. I just like working on a slightly thicker paper that has a little bit of slickness to it. That's my jam right now. It doesn't have a lot of tooth to it, so there's not a lot of friction when you draw on it with a pencil. James was talking about Alfred. I went there for a couple years to get an associate's before I moved on to some other places. But, yeah, not a lot to do in Alfred. But when I was there, Alfred University had amazing concerts that were free. Looking back at that now, especially, were a lot of those bands that came to play in Alfred when I was across the street at Alfred State, a lot of those bands they brought and what those bands ended up doing, they had really, really good management of that program and the people that they brought. A lot of really cool bands. Let's see. Here's this one. One of the bands that I put my interview with the Secret Machines in Wesley the Robot number 3, which is a band that came over and played at Alfred University my freshman year, and they're putting out a new album like right after I republished that interview from like 10 years ago. It's not the album that they mentioned in the interview I did with them, but super cool that they're doing another album like right after I published that interview. And I followed I don't know if he's their current guitarist, but the one from their 3rd and 4th albums, Phil Karnitz. I followed him on Instagram, and then he followed me back and he was like liking some of my artwork. Just a crazy world we live in. I feel like I always get better results with a brush pen. Even though sometimes I like the scratchy line of the nib. Stuff like that. I feel like brush always looks better. You can definitely cover up your mistakes easier with a brush, because the brush strokes are so large, you can cover it up. Looks like this is almost dry in there. Looks pretty decent on screen. Oh, Alfred State. I went to one or two parties at Alfred State. I mean, obviously I'm more of an art guy, so I was probably like working on drawing or swimming most of the time. Even though I wasn't on the swim team, but they did have a decent pool there. Yeah. James, did you go to Alfred State or Alfred University? Or are you just from the area, or...? I also transferred. Made some really good friends though when I was there. I mean, obviously, my Wesley the Robot story is based off of my experiences at Alfred State. I mean, there's some truth to it, but like, it's also extremely outrageous because there was no robot, obviously. 347 already. A lot of good progress. My watch is telling me time to get on my feet. Give me 13 minutes and I will. Wow. I know I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. I've always been interested in the storytelling part of it and the character building part of it. Seems like it would be fun. Just for whatever reason, I never took the time to actually learn that stuff. Evan, this is Strathmore marker board. It's similar to Bristol. Around the same thickness. Well, it's a little thinner than Bristol, but it's bleed resistant too. I don't remember if it's cheaper than Bristol. But I like it. I was looking for. I bought this little pad of marker paper, which is what I did my fan art, my 6 fan arts artwork on. And I was looking for some more of that, and that was the next size up, because the little ones are actually pretty pricey for what they are. So I was thinking about maybe cutting one down, but they ended up buying a small one anyway. But I like them because they work well with the pencils and they work well with the brushes. They work pretty good with the pens too. But I think that I like the way the brush looks better. You just have to, no matter, even if you have the best pen, you still have to fight with it a little bit. That's like the #1 question that artists get asked online is like, oh, what brush is that? And I would say like 95% is the artist and not the brush. Probably even more than that. But in the case of these brush pens, I do think that they can save a not great drawing and turn it into like a decent drawing with the lines. Like just sometimes just the right tool makes a difference. And like if it just makes nice lines, then you can save an ugly drawing. And I think these brush pens do that. Oh, with Alfred State Stories. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a few that won't make it into Wesley. 354 now. I think the brush pen does a nice job of like capturing the energy of the pencils. I gotta wait for that one to dry. Could do a little bit more. Oh yeah, this zombie guy is eventually going to be holding a bunch of balloons. Not sure what that's all about. This is from years and years ago now. I think I just had good reference imagery and I was working off of that. That's fun too sometimes, is to just start with some reference images and just make up a composition as you go along. That can work out. Let's try. Well, it's 4 o'clock right now. I'll just finish up this, inking this figure, and then we'll wrap it up. Alright, that's pretty good for now. So the progress we got done to inking this profile view of all these characters here. And then straight on view, these characters here. These illustrations will be in, what is it? I think it's going to be Wesley the Robot number 8. Kind of jumping ahead a little bit to create a nice cushion of work, so it won't be burned out by the time I get to the end. Once again, I am Aaron Z. Lee. Let's see where I put my little notepad. This has been Pens and Pedals Oswego Comic Shop live stream, July 8th, 2020, inking Wesley the Robot group shots. You can find me at pensandpedals.com or at pensandpedals on Instagram. the creator of Wesley the Robot. Issues 1 and 3 are available at the comic shop. I think issue 2 is currently sold out, but I may do a small print run. Also created Preetza's Pizza. This first volume, Son of a Pizza Man, is out now. I think the comic shop has a copy. The human son of a living pizza has to fight zombie anchovies. And, yeah, I think that is a wrap for today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm glad that you guys got some entertainment value out of the drawings I'm doing here. And I'll either be back on Wednesday or Thursday of next week, depending on whichever one works out better. But Wednesday is working out okay, I think. Issue 2 is sold out, Evan says. Yeah, so if you're interested in that, let the comic shop know, and I'll know how many to order. Alrighty, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in. Remember, make more comics, read more comics, and make more comics. Make a lot of comics. Alright.